This is a Hollywood story that's lifting spirits and saving lives where it counts, in the real world. Today's guest, legendary Hollywood producer Scott Budnick of the Hangover series and Amity Foundation leader Doug Bond have pulled together to give many of those convicted of crimes, especially first-time offenders, a legitimate second chance. From Ballard Studios in West Hollywood, California, a special edition of 13th and Park.
We give you information, not a panic attack.
I mean, look what's going on. I mean, my God.
This was it. The kids were gonna die.
That time is gone forever.
This is the biggest story in America.
We weren't prepared for this.
Don't you want to speak truth to power?
Toughest thing I ever had to do.
Welcome to the show. We got two of probably my favorite people on the planet, Scott Budnick and Doug Bond.
That's so sweet.
It is. Well, Scott, you are in the film industry. Great credits that no one's ever heard of, like the Hangover series and War Dogs, Due Date. You had an interesting participation in Just Mercy, which was the Bryan Stevenson movie played by Michael B. Jordan, Jamie Foxx. Good fun stuff there. But you came into at least my orbit, or I came into your orbit on issues around criminal justice reform. So we will get to that. We also have my newer friend, but good friend, Doug Bond, who's the CEO of Amity Foundation. Your work has been tremendous. And people might wonder, like, what is this connection between a Hollywood producer and a criminal justice nonprofit CEO?
I'm the president of the Doug Bond fan club.
I love it. I love it.
Excellent.
You went from Hangover series, like things like that which we all loved, and Todd Phillips is brilliant. You guys were, did some amazing work on that and all the other stuff that you've done. But, Just Mercy was sort of a different thing, and it kind of started to bridge your two interests, right? In terms of people thinking about criminal justice and the justice system in general and how we look at those things and those issues of reform. So you've been working on a number of projects around that. What made you kind of make that transition, and maybe you start with why you got interested in criminal justice type stuff in the first place?
The first few years of making comedies and 16 years of partnership with Todd Phillips, I mean, I feel like I really got the hang out of making big commercial movies that like brought in the masses, right? So I feel like I do have that understanding of like, what is commercial? What are people looking for? And although it wasn't like heartfelt like Just Mercy, right, to be able to make people laugh for 2 hours straight during like the worst recession of our lifetime, I felt that was meaningful. Like I really enjoyed it. When I was on the movie Old School, which was kind of at the beginning of my comedy career, I met someone who brought me down to a juvenile hall for the first time. And I was able to meet young people that were facing life in prison. And the kid to my left was 15 years old, and I asked him if he had a good week, and he said it was a tough week. He just got sentenced to 300 years to life in prison. And to hear a young man tell me that was shocking. And then I asked him what happened, and he said, well, I stood next to my friend who shot the victim in the butt. The victim was in and out of the hospital in a day. And for standing next to the person with the gun, I got 300 years to life. And I just realized right away, like, if that was my kid or any of our children, they'd be out on bail, sleeping in their bed at home, not in this cold juvenile hall. And they'd probably have the best lawyer in Los Angeles and would get probation for not shooting somebody that was in and out of the hospital in a day. But David was going to prison for the rest of his life. And that just seemed like fundamentally very unfair and not a city I wanted to live in. So I committed to those young men on that morning in 2004 that if they're willing to change their life, I'm willing to be with them throughout the entire process. After Hangover 3 and after watching 12 Years a Slave, going to Todd Phillips, who I was with for a decade and a half, and saying that I wanted to leave and start a nonprofit organization. And he was super gracious. And that's when I left the film business for 5 years entirely and started a criminal justice nonprofit called ARC, the Anti-Recidivism Coalition, really focusing on like creating a culture of family and community and providing reentry resources to folks when they're coming home to prison, whether it's housing, jobs, therapy, healing, etc., dealing with policy change. And how do we stop sentencing young people to die in prison, Anthony? And that's how you and I met, right?
Yep.
Passing Senate Bill 260 in 2013, which stopped California from sending underage youth to die in prison. And in fact, David, who was the kid that had 300 years to life, because of that bill, Anthony, I don't even know if you know this, had his sentence reduced to 25 to life. And then when he ended up graduating college and being a mentor in prison, the governor commuted his sentence and he came home.
Wow.
And now works to help prevent kids from going into gangs and going into the system. And like everything that we did, Anthony, on the policy change front in the Capitol, I remember us sitting in our cars outside a soccer game talking about like how to draft this bill.
Yeah.
And it was through the process of starting ARC that you go out and you say, okay, who's already doing this and who's doing it well? Then I was able to meet Doug Bond and go see the work of the Amity Foundation. And Doug is a hero of mine and a mentor of mine. And Doug laid the groundwork for all of us that want to do this work. And it just all stems from Doug's leadership and like his mentors, Naya, that created this incredible organization. And when you hear Doug's story, you understand why this organization exists as it does. And when you see ARC, you see so much of it built kind of with the bricks that we learned from places like Amity.
Doug, I mean, you got a great story too, man. You CEO of Amity, but talk about what Amity is for those who may not know, and then how you came to be in the role that you're in.
So, I'll say I think Amity's evolved over the years.
Yep.
We continue to learn. We continue to build community. Amity, for me, was a life raft. It saved me in the 80s as a child. I was in many foster homes. While my parents were incarcerated, the founder got me out of foster care and reunited me with a father that had done a lot of time. And back in the 80s, single fathers that were felons, convicted of felonies and sent to prison weren't getting custody of their children. So they took a chance on me and my father, my sister, and I had a judge that mentored me that helped get me back to Amity. And my father's parole officer was my baseball coach. And so I got to see all these pieces working together when people really care about individuals, and that really shaped my life. I think in my 20s, I was struggling and could have ended up easily in prison. And they came back and brought me to LA, dropped me off in South Central at our campus on 38th and Grand, and said, hey, these folks will take care of you. And they did. They wrapped their arms around me. A bunch of folks that frankly were struggling with coming out of prison and with their own addiction and challenges cared about me and helped me become the father, the husband, the friend that I am today. I just fell in love with what they did, but I also started to understand the struggles. So I started getting involved in a lot of the policy works where folks like all of us connected. So Amity is a teaching therapeutic community that really believes in having people with lived experience be part of that process. So we have both a lived and learned workforce. And then we believe in having collaborations like ARC. We help work with about 500 community-based orgs, and every organization's unique in their mission and vision. And we want to make sure that we're all supporting the bigger vision.
Yes, but you started, I guess, as a client.
Yeah.
But how did you end up onto the path of becoming the CEO, from client to CEO?
I started off in 2007 and, the financial crisis. So I saw how fragile community-based orgs were, nonprofits were, and how reliant they were on government, frankly. And so I started off by building up some of the employment services and wanted to diversify our funding so we could weather the storms and not be an organization that had to shut down. I remember starting off in my second month in the job, I had to go around with a Ryder truck and empty out all the prisons because they shut down all the prison programs. And that really stuck with me and still worry about those things as a leader. But I worked my way up literally from planting roses, which a founder made me do, to washing the dishes, to doing every role at Amity and learning all the different parts of the Amity Foundation. Built their employment services department. Then I built their housing department and started learning that you couldn't just do treatment with people and then that person ended up going to a shelter. That wasn't a good outcome. Right. And they didn't have a job and they didn't have a house. So what were we really doing with people if we didn't do all these things? Now we oversee employment services. We build about 1,000 units of housing in the community, and we do it with people that have been impacted.
You're dealing with a different pipeline. You're dealing with the pipeline from prison back to community and becoming like a productive member of society, as we say, we all hope for. But your organization is focused on that. So you're starting with programs in prison, reentry services, housing, job pathway, right?
We are. I'd love to get more front end, frankly, and avoid people impacted by the carceral system. I'll say with Scott, I'm going to sing his praises for a minute because he's been a hero for me. We've been able to overlap some of the worlds in his industry and our world. We have a ranch that we work on in partnership because of vision of Scott and others with ARC, where people are getting trained in the Hollywood unions.
Wow.
And are youth that would otherwise been in some of the challenging neighborhoods that led them to where they're at. They're at a beautiful ranch in Los Feliz with about 200 horses and in one of the best and most therapeutic environments. And they're going to come out and make six figures.
Yeah.
So we want to get more front end to stop and avoid people that frankly don't have to spend their entire life in prison, just like I was given that opportunity when I was in my 20s.
Man, that is so cool. I mean, bridging these two worlds in a way that has a profound impact on people's lives and really turning them around. Scott, you know, my story, I lost my brother to murder, so there's lots of ways you can react. But the two main ways is through, vengeance and anger and, hatred and all those things. Or you can say, wait, which is what I did, was took a step back and said, how do I prevent another Joseph Dixon from killing Joseph Williams, right?
Yeah, but Anthony, how? When you're consumed with so much anger and you've lost someone you love,
right?
How?
Yeah, you have it. There's no question about it. You have that starting out. But to what end, right? Like I watched it pretty much kill my mom. I mean, the grief just overtook her. What I thought was, I want to pour my energy into something else. So as you know, Scott, I started another Stand Strong Foundation in Kern County, Bakersfield, where I'm from, to reach those kids. And I was trying to do a lot of the front end work. I was like, if you're getting referrals and getting suspensions, that's the early warning signs. So let's get to those kids. And my mom was involved in that too. She was actually assistant superintendent of the schools there. We partnered with former superintendent of the schools, Jean Fuller, who later got elected to the Assembly and then the Senate. And she was a Republican minority leader in the Senate while we were doing all this work, right? So, I don't want to say I woke up one day, but it probably did wake up one day and say, okay, I can be angry and I can be vengeful, but it's going to feed me and eat me up. Or I can take this thing that's burning inside of me and put it into something that I think is a little bit more productive.
I'll tell you this. I don't think there's a job on the planet that feeds my soul more than this, right? For some people, it's a mission and a calling. And I know for Doug, consumes his entire life and gives him purpose. I think we both share that. And Anthony, I know you've always been one of service and one of giving back and being there for people that have nothing. So I think it's what makes all of us friends.
Yeah, that's true. So there might be some people who are watching this, listening to this and saying, okay, come on, you guys. I mean, this is all warm and fuzzy. This is all well and good, but I'm seeing these smash and grabs and crime is horrible. And obviously George Floyd shined a light on the horrors of the justice system from arrest to incarceration. And, for lack of a better way to put it, softened the appetite for doing some sort of criminal justice reform. But what's the thinking about, hey, great to do criminal justice reform, but, I got people putting guns in people's faces on the streets and doing these smashing grabs and people seeing it.
Of course, as soon as something happens, there has to be accountability, right? Like someone should get arrested, whether it's a smash and grab, whether it's a violent crime, there should be immediate accountability. But then what to do with that person once they're arrested, I think is crucial, right? If it is a 16-year-old kid that's never been in trouble before and wasn't the main perpetrator, then maybe a diversion program is the right thing to do. Maybe if we keep them in jail, they're going to get worse, not better. And that means they'll create another victim. And now we're less safe. You can't forget about someone when they're arrested and put in prison because virtually all of them are coming home, right? So if you say you're about public safety, but you don't care about rehabilitation and you don't care about helping folks upon reentry, then you don't care about public safety, because the number one thing that needs to be done while someone's locked up is to make them a better person, to make them a better neighbor, to give them the services and the mentorship and the treatment and anything they need to become a better neighbor, to become a better person that's coexisting with us out in the community. So to me, it's not it's scary. There's more smash and grabs. This place is out of control. Lock them up and throw away the key. That's not going to make us safer, right? Yeah, maybe taking them off the street temporarily will make us safer for a moment, but really looking at the human being and what their issues are and what we need to help them correct before they come back home, that's it.
And I'll just say, if you don't provide the conditions for that person to be successful, then we aren't doing good public safety. If we're setting up the conditions where there's not housing for people that are formerly incarcerated, which is some of the challenges, some of the definitions of homelessness, doesn't allow you to get into affordable housing if you've been incarcerated for 90 days or more. And so those are big policy issues that have to change on the federal level, because people need all of those resources. We have to get people into employment and livable wage jobs, not just an entry-level job. That could be a good first job, but you have to move people up to be making a sustainable and family sustainable wage income, frankly, in the community. I think, those are the things that keep me up at night as well, is that we don't want the one story, and that's often what's on the news, the one story of the person that didn't get it right, frankly, and 1,000 people could have came home, be homeowners, be successfully re-entered with their family. So our margin of error has to be zero.
Yeah.
We have to get it right every time. That's what I tell our team on this. And so we can't afford that one instance that's going to end up highlighting this is all failure. I think that's a problem with criminal justice reform, is that we don't look at all of the amazing stories that really do make our community safer.
Yeah, I know it's interesting because we think about criminal justice reform, but then there's also smart justice. And Scott, did you work with Newt Gingrich on that stuff?
Well, yeah, on the bills that we worked on together to stop sending young people to die in prison, SB 260, we had Newt Gingrich, we had Grover Norquist, we had the American Conservative Union. We even had Newt Gingrich write an op-ed in the Fresno Bee, right, to get some of our Central Valley legislators some cover amongst their constituents. And so, yeah, I think if you frame this properly and you have a good public safety argument, I think you can get a lot of fiscal conservatives, a lot of evangelicals, and a lot of people that just care about humanity that may not vote the same that you vote.
Yeah. Sometimes it's a hard sell, but it's an important one. Scott, what are you working on now? What's next, man? You want to break some news for us?
We just finished an incredible movie called Nona's, comedy dramedy with Vince Vaughn and a bunch of Italian grandmothers.
Nice.
That hopefully will be coming out over the holiday season. It's just a big family, fun, beautiful movie. We made a movie called Winner that's all about threats to our democracy, but told as a comedy, with Amelia Jones, who starred in the Academy Award-winning movie Coda, Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, and Connie Britton from White Lotus and Friday Night Lights. We're doing the Lewis Hamilton documentary right now for Apple, which is the Formula One doc.
Wow.
Currently shooting that in production. We're developing 35 other projects that might be going into production soon. Some television series, scripted series, docuseries, feature films, etc. So, yeah, doing it all.
When are we going to see Hangover 4?
Man, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, buddy.
Doug, anything you thinking about?
So we just awarded 165 organizations as part of the Care First Jails Last effort here in LA County to help support community-based orgs and provide them the infrastructure and resources that they need to build them up. And I think that, we're continuing to expand on the mission of what we're doing. I'll mention some of the fire camp projects. And I know Scott's been a champion on this. We have 2 projects that are going to help youth that are being brought from prison to help train as firefighters, and they're coming home, they're getting jobs and careers in the firefighting field, and it's an incredible, impactful program that we're hoping to build on.
That's great. I love it. Well, Scott, man, I'll let you get back to what you're up to, man, and thanks for bringing the cash, man. You're making us feel guilty.
Love you guys.
Love you, Scott.
Love you guys. Appreciate you both.
All right, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right.
13th and Park is thrilled to welcome a second home to our family, the state of California, with the opening of our new studio in Hollywood, where we'll continue to share the biggest stories of the day and those behind them. Subscribe today for free to 13th and Park's YouTube channel so you never miss another episode.